The team that went to the Stanley Cup final but did not win it last year. Nobody called them to win any round they were in, and yet they did 3 of 4 times. Now, does it help that every team's first-line center seemed to go down in the first game of the series? Sure. But Montreal deserved everything they got last playoffs, a ton of change. And actually, the day of this recording, we find out that Carey Price will not be in the lineup for the foreseeable future, and it doesn't have anything to do with injury. He has entered the player assistance program. So we'll leave Carey Price to the side on this one because he's not a part of it right now.
It's impossible to know when he'll be back.
Right.
So how are you supposed to judge?
So we're going to judge it based on him not being there and not being there for a significant amount of time. Jake Allen is now your starter. I mean, let's start with the goaltending because that is a big question mark now. Not that Jake Allen is a bad goalie, but it's not going to be Caden Primo backing him up.
I don't think he's ready.
So then, with Montreal, they're dealing with Samuel Montembeault.
Yeah, who I don't know who he was most recently with. I remember him from the Panthers.
Right.
He was most recently with the Panthers.
Nailed it.
So this is a guy, if you've never heard of him before, that's okay. He has 25 games his entire NHL career, a 9-8-3 record, 320 GAA, and an 892 save percentage.
And you're forgetting the most important part.
What's the most important?
He's from Quebec.
Oh!
He's a Quebecois. That's so important.
Well,
It is, though.
He might even coach.
We have a future star and GM and head coach of the Montreal Canadiens.
Wow, look at that.
Samuel Montembeault.
Man, he is a French general from the 1700s, no question.
It is very regal.
Count Montembeault.
General.
I think it matters. I think there could be something here.
Well, okay.
I get lucky.
One thing we talked about on the podcast that we recorded earlier today is Montreal is a team that kind of runs on magic.
Yeah.
They really are, and when they catch lightning in a bottle, they're unbelievable. Mm-hmm. What if he plays the best hockey of his career? I'm serious.
If it's in butts.
So here's the thing. They made the playoffs last year. Yes, the division, whatever. Jake Allen was a 907. Price was a 901.
And they made it.
Yeah, they did not make it on the back of their goaltending.
Yeah. So we were looking it up earlier. Price played only 25 games because he was out for a large part of the season with a concussion.
So less than half.
So let me add this to that. Shea Weber.
Yeah.
Out for the season.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Byron out for significant time.
Yep.
Mike Hoffman day to day. Cedric Paquette day to day. The defense. We'll start with the defense here. You've added Chris Weidman, and if you've added David Savard. So we'll get to David in a second. But you got Joel Edmondson, Jeff Petrie, Romanoff, Savard, Sherratt, and Chris Weidman. Not a bad looking defense.
No.
I think in a perfect world, Joel Edmondson is not your number one left side D man. I think it would be Shea Weber.
Yep.
But Petrie
left side.
Or sorry. Edmondson's left side. Sorry. What I'm trying to say is
You'd have him with Weber.
right. That's what you want. Petrie Weber, right? Do you not?
Him or Sherratt.
Yeah. So what do you think here of this defense? What do you need from this defense? What's Weidman bring? David Savard signed the second that the contract came through on the fax machine, because apparently they still fax those things over. They don't use DocuSign. What do you think about Savard coming in and Weidman coming in and what this defense looks like now?
Yep. One last thing, getting Montembeault was smart because the goaltending is not ready, but Caden Primo can give you NHL games.
There you go.
The defense, it's still like I'm looking at them, and the reason we talk about them in such a perhaps perceived disrespectful way for a team that just went to the Stanley Cup final is they were 17th in goals for and 18th in goals against.
And finished 18th in the league.
They're literally bottom half of middle of the pack.
And they have been the last 2 years. If you remember the bubble season,
24th.
They shouldn't have made the playoffs.
Yeah.
They would have never made the playoffs
Like
in a realistic scenario.
By a wide margin.
By not even close.
Yeah.
And they knocked off Pittsburgh.
And I like David Savard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. But not having Shea Weber around, I think is going to be a big problem for the team. Not having Carey Price there, that's really tough. We talked
Just
about
the personalities in the room, right?
We talk about the leadership of the team and the heartbeat of the team. That's who those two players are. And it's really hard for me to put a big stamp of approval on the Montreal Canadiens, even if they added Savard not having Weber there.
It reached the point where there's too many things to overcome for this team. Like they've been
That's their magic.
Like you keep saying, they keep running on magic, but what happens when the magic runs out and the world keeps throwing, hey, here's another injury at you. Here you lose another top player. Here you're trying to replace this guy with Christian Dvorak.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like it's gotten too much for the Canadiens team, so that's why I'm not expecting much from them this season.
If they do the thing and they do make the playoffs with everything that's been thrown at them, it's one of the best stories of any team has in the
But
sport.
your reasonable expectations can't be that they do this because of how ridiculous if they do it, it would be.
If they do it, wonderful.
Right.
But
Yes.
if I'm putting my prediction on it, are we there?
Well, so no, we're not there
No,
yet.
no,
We're
not there
about
yet?
5 minutes in, but here we haven't even talked about the forward group yet. So what I want to say here is with the forward group, Paul Byron, you're going to miss him for the first 5 months, surgery and recovery. But they also lost Phil Deneau and Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Now, Kotkaniemi might have been scratched during the finals, but that's a good young player that you would hope would have continued to develop within the system
For this season.
You
would have hoped he takes a step, right?
to replace a Paul Byron. And then Phil Deneau, that was really his coming out party to a National Hockey League audience beyond Montreal. I think Montreal Canadiens fans knew what Phil Deneau could be. I think what we saw in the playoffs is how effective he can be, which is why it's so puzzling that LA was like, well, we're going to lock you up, because I'm still not even sure that they're going to make the playoffs.
How effective he can be without scoring goals.
Yes.
That was the most important thing about Philip Deneau.
Which he can do,
He's
like in the regular season.
But he's an unbelievable player without doing that. He contributes in so many other ways on the ice.
Part of me wonders if management's looking at this and going, we have to outscore some of our problems here. So you add perennial 30-goal man Mike Hoffman to the roster.
Who's also injured.
Also injured, yes. So when he's back, you add him to Drouin, who was not playing.
But you take Hoffman, and he's basically Thomas Tatar replacement.
Yes,
Right.
Who they maybe like better than Tatar.
Defensive liability cookie guy. Who he will score.
Yep. So Hoffman, add that to a core of Drouin, Suzuki.
Drouin being back is huge.
Yeah, Drouin, Suzuki taking another step.
Yep.
Josh Anderson, Again,
you need more.
You need more. Like you could see it. Like that first game against the Leafs in the playoffs, Josh Anderson was unbelievable. But there were parts of that playoff where Josh Anderson was completely invisible, and part of the regular season last year where he was invisible.
He had one game every series where you just go, this guy can't be stopped. And you had, I think it was the beginning of the season where he scored most of his goals. You go, this guy's a force of nature. What a brilliant move. And then he disappears. Like the games where he's not engaged, he's not a factor.
The games, but where the games where he is, boy,
he's the best player on the ice.
He is, and he's scary. He's got that rare Tom Wilson quality, and I always bring it back to Tom Wilson, as we said, this is a rare quality that he has. It's the size, it's the physicality, it's the ability to score goals. If he could just put it together more consistently. Now, the new pickup, and there's a couple guys I want to talk about here. The new pickup guys who is supposed to take care of the hole that Jesperi Kotkaniemi left, maybe even be an improvement on, is Christian Dvorak. What do you expect from him?
I mean, I think that's about it, right? Like this is the problem. He's further along in his development than Kotkaniemi is, but his ceiling is not what Kotkaniemi's was. The Montreal Canadiens selected him 3rd overall. Dvorak has had, do you have his numbers in front of it? It's very consistent production. Maybe with a bigger role in Montreal that improves. I don't think he's hit 20 goals yet. Can Montreal get him up to 25? Can they? Where's he at? 17 goals. He had 18 goals 2 seasons ago in 70 games. He had 17 goals in 56 games. So 17 goals in 56
pretty
games.
good.
It's roughly a 25 goal pace. I'm, not a mathematician in my head. If you can get him back to there, then it's a more than good enough trade for the Montreal Canadiens.
But the team isn't adding to their team; they're replacing what they lost.
So this is why this team comes down to the kids.
Yes.
So Suzuki and Caulfield.
Suzuki and Cole, an entire season of Cole Caulfield, and you talk about a team that runs off magic. I mean, holy shit!
Yeah,
that player's special.
We really don't know what we have in those two guys because we haven't seen them over an 82-game season where
Together.
they're in a position where it's like, hey, okay, you got to lead this team and take them and try and win.
The changing of the guard was always going to happen in Montreal. It needs to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to happen now. They have just a really good crop of guys who are going to be ready to join. At the time we're recording this, we don't know if they're going to have Norlinder on the back end. But Romanov, who was a guy who wasn't always depended on in the playoffs, has to take a step. Suzuki, who's already been great, guess what? We're demanding even more of you. You got to take a step. Cole Caulfield, you came into the season randomly. He's still a rookie. Everyone's pegging you for the Calder. We need it.
So where do you project them to be real quick here?
Really, fifth.
Fifth.
I struggle with it. They just made the final. Fifth.
I have Montreal 6th.
Wow. I have Montreal 5th.